The text came through at 3:47 p.m. "We have your daughter. No police, no negotiations. 4 hours on the clock." By the time the city realized something was wrong, he'd already started dismantling everything, and the people who took her had no idea what kind of man they'd just awakened. If this story pulled you in, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what's coming next. I've got another unforgettable story dropping tomorrow. And while you're here, jump into the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing our community from all around the world. All right, let's get back into it. Jorge Morales checked his watch. 3:47 p.m. Emily should have been home 15 minutes ago. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Her backpack wasn't by the door. Her shoes weren't kicked off in the hallway like always. And on the kitchen counter sat her phone, the one she never went anywhere without. Jorge picked it up. 3 missed calls from him. 2 texts he'd sent asking where she was, all unread. That's when he saw the notification at the top of the screen. A message from an unknown number. Not to Emily. To him. "We have your daughter. No police. No negotiations. Wait for instructions." Below it, a photo loaded slowly, pixel by pixel. Emily, eyes wide, confusion shifting into fear. In the back of a vehicle Jorge didn't recognize. 2 figures beside her. Faces deliberately obscured by shadows and angles. Jorge's hand didn't shake. His breathing didn't change. But the air in the room shifted, grew heavier, like the pressure drop before a storm. He made the first call. "Rivera." His voice was calm, cold. "Drop everything. Get to my location now." The second call was shorter. "Lock down communication channels. I want eyes on every camera feed within a 10-block radius of the university." 15 minutes ago. The third call never connected. The line went dead before anyone picked up. Jorge set Emily's phone down carefully, as if it might break. Then he walked to the window overlooking the street below. Traffic moved normally. People walked without urgency. The city continued as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. 23 years ago, Jorge Morales had held his daughter for the first time and made himself a promise. She would never know his world, never carry his weight, never look over her shoulder the way he did. He'd kept that promise. Emily grew up protected but not suffocated, independent but not ignorant. She knew her father had influence, knew doors opened when he walked through them, but Jorge had built a wall between her life and his. She studied architecture. She had friends who knew nothing about territory or leverage or the careful mathematics of power. She lived freely. That freedom had cost Jorge more than money. It had cost him distance. She didn't call as often as she used to, didn't visit as much. She was building her own life, one that didn't need him hovering in the shadows. Jorge had accepted that distance, had welcomed it, even because it meant she was safe. The door opened behind him. Rivera stepped inside, a lean man in his 40s with sharp eyes and the kind of stillness that came from decades of reading danger before it arrived. "What happened?" Jorge handed him Emily's phone without turning from the window. Rivera read the message. His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. "When?" 20 minutes. Maybe less. "Demands?" "Not yet." Rivera was already moving, pulling out his own phone, fingers flying across the screen. "I've got people checking traffic cameras, CCTV, anything near the university, and her usual route home. If they moved her in a vehicle, we'll find the make and model within the hour." "We don't have an hour." Rivera looked up. "Jorge, they took her in daylight, Rivera, on a public street. They wanted this visible. They wanted me to know." Jorge finally turned from the window, and Rivera saw something in his face that made him go still. "This isn't about ransom. It's about pressure." "Then who?" "Someone who thinks I'll negotiate. Someone who believes I'll trade territory or roots or influence to get her back." Jorge's voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath it was something sharp and cold. "Someone who doesn't understand that the moment they touched my daughter, negotiation stopped being an option." Rivera had worked with Jorge for 17 years. He'd seen him navigate gang wars, federal investigations, betrayals that would have broken lesser men. He'd watched Jorge build an empire through patience, calculation, and an almost supernatural ability to see 3 moves ahead. But he'd never seen this. This wasn't the strategist who played long games. This was something older, raw, infinitely more dangerous. "What do you need?" Rivera asked. "Everything. Every informant, every contact, every favor owed. I want to know who's ambitious enough to try this, and stupid enough to think they'll survive it. That's a long list. Then start cutting it down." Rivera nodded and stepped toward the door, but Jorge's voice stopped him. And Rivera? When we find them, when? Not if. Emily comes home first, no matter what it costs, no matter who gets in the way. She comes home. Understood. The door closed. Jorge was alone again. He walked to Emily's room. The bed was made, neat and precise the way she always left it. Her desk held textbooks, sketches of buildings she was designing for class, a coffee mug with a ring stain on the bottom. Her life paused mid-sentence. On the wall above her desk was a photo from 3 years ago, Emily's college graduation. She wore her cap and gown, laughing at something Jorge had said, her hand on his shoulder. Jorge stood beside her in a dark suit, smiling in that careful way he always did in public. She looked so happy in that photo, so free. Jorge had spent her entire childhood keeping her separate from violence. Every decision, every move he made, was calculated with one question. Would this touch Emily? Deals that would have been profitable were rejected because they involved people too unstable, too likely to spiral into conflict that might reach his home. Alliances that would have expanded his influence were declined because they carried too much heat, too much federal attention. Jorge had sacrificed expansion, profit, power, all of it to keep Emily's world clean. And someone had decided that sacrifice was weakness. Someone had looked at Jorge's greatest achievement and seen an opening. They were wrong. Jorge's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, different from the first one. Midnight. $2 million. Cash. Instructions to follow. If you involve authorities, she dies. If you try to find her, she dies. If you do anything except wait, she dies. Jorge read it twice. Then he forwarded it to Rivera with a single line. Trace this. I want the location of every tower it pinged. He checked his watch again. 3 p.m. 4 hours until midnight. 4 hours to dismantle whoever thought they could take his daughter and walk away. 4 hours to teach the city why certain lines should never be crossed. Jorge Morales put his phone in his pocket and walked toward the door. The careful, controlled man who built an empire was gone. What walked out of that apartment was something the city hadn't seen in years. A father with nothing left to lose and 4 hours to make someone pay for their mistake. Jorge descended the stairs 2 at a time, his phone already pressed to his ear. I need the building secured. No one in or out without clearance. His voice was level, but each word carried the weight of absolute command. And get me Octavio. Now. The back entrance of his building opened into an alley where Rivera waited beside a black sedan, engine running. Another man stood by the passenger door, younger, nervous energy barely contained beneath a pressed suit. Boss. I've got preliminary camera footage from... In the car? Jorge slid into the back seat. Rivera took the wheel. The younger man, Torres, climbed in beside him, laptop already open. The sedan pulled into traffic smoothly, unremarkably. Just another vehicle in the city's endless flow. Talk, Jorge said. Torres's fingers flew across the keyboard. We pulled CCTV from 3 blocks surrounding the university. Emily left her last class at 3:18 p.m. She walked her normal route toward the subway station. He turned the laptop so Jorge could see the grainy footage. Here, 3:24 p.m. The screen showed Emily walking alone, backpack over one shoulder, phone in her hand. She looked relaxed, unaware, exactly as she should on an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. Jorge's chest tightened. Then this. Torres clicked to another angle. 3:26 p.m. 2 blocks from the station. A dark SUV pulled alongside Emily. The footage was too distant, the angle too high to show faces clearly. But Jorge could see Emily stop, see her take a step back. Then 2 men emerged from the vehicle, one from the driver's side, one from the passenger door. The interaction lasted less than 30 seconds. No visible weapons, no struggle that would draw attention, just 2 men moving with practiced efficiency, guiding Emily toward the vehicle with hands that looked casual from a distance but weren't. Emily's body language changed in those 30 seconds. Confusion, resistance, then fear. Jorge's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. The SUV door closed. The vehicle merged back into traffic, gone. License plate? Jorge's voice hadn't risen, but something in it made Torres flinch. Obscured, deliberately. But we tracked the vehicle for 7 blocks before it entered an area with no camera coverage. Based on the direction and timing, Torres pulled up a map with several routes highlighted. They had multiple exit options. Could have gone to any of these districts. So we have nothing. We have the make and model, late model Escalade, black, aftermarket tint, We've got people checking registration databases, rental agencies, recent purchases. That'll take hours we don't have. Rivera spoke without taking his eyes off the road. We have something better than the vehicle. Jorge looked up. We have the pattern. Rivera continued. This wasn't random. They knew Emily's schedule, knew her route, knew exactly where she'd be, vulnerable, and when. He took a corner smoothly, heading east. That takes surveillance. Days of it, maybe weeks. Someone's been watching her. The implications settled over the car like a weight. They've been watching my daughter. Jorge's voice went very quiet. For weeks. Which means they're either very confident or very desperate, Rivera said. Confident they can control the situation, or desperate enough to risk everything on one move. Torres cleared his throat nervously. Boss, we've also been reaching out through channels, putting out the word that you're looking for information. If anyone knows anything, they won't talk. Jorge cut him off. Not yet. Right now, everyone's watching to see what I'll do. Whether I'll negotiate, whether I'll show weakness. He leaned back, mind racing through possibilities. The first person who talks becomes a target, so they'll wait until there's a clear winner. Then how do we make them talk? The car fell silent. Jorge pulled out his phone and dialed. The call connected on the second ring. Octavio. Jorge's tone shifted, still controlled, but carrying an edge that hadn't been there before. I need to know who's been moving against me. Who's ambitious enough to think this play makes sense? The voice on the other end was older, rough from decades of cigarettes. Jorge, I heard. I'm sorry. I don't need sorry. I need names. A pause. Then. There's been talk. Nothing concrete. But word is someone's been consolidating support in the warehouse district, buying loyalty, making promises about territory if certain obstacles were removed. Who? I don't have confirmation. Just rumors. But the name that keeps coming up is Ramos. Jorge's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around the phone. Ramos. It makes sense, Octavio continued carefully. He's been pushing for expansion for months. He's got ambition, and just enough backing to think he can move against you. But Jorge. The older man's voice dropped. If it is Ramos, this isn't just about territory. This is personal. This is him trying to prove you're vulnerable. He's right. I am vulnerable. Jorge's voice was ice. Because I have something I care about more than power. But that's not weakness, Octavio. That's what makes me more dangerous than he can possibly understand. What do you need? Everything you have on Ramos. Locations, associates, safe houses. I want to know where he sleeps, where he eats, who he trusts. I'll make calls. You have 2 hours. Jorge ended the call and looked at Rivera in the rearview mirror. Ramos. Rivera's expression darkened. He's got backing from the Eastern syndicates. Not major players, but enough to make him bold. He paused. If he's behind this, Jorge, he won't be alone. There'll be layers, protection. He's not stupid enough to keep Emily anywhere we can easily reach. Then we go through the layers. That takes time. Then we move faster. The car pulled to a stop outside a nondescript building in a neighborhood that looked residential but wasn't. Rivera killed the engine. What is this place? Torres asked. Jorge opened his door. Somewhere people tell the truth. Inside, the building was quiet. Too quiet for the number of vehicles parked outside. Jorge walked through the entrance without knocking, Rivera and Torres flanking him. The main room held 6 men, all of whom stood immediately when Jorge entered. These weren't soldiers or muscle. These were information brokers, facilitators, the people who connected dots that others couldn't see. Jorge's presence transformed the room's energy instantly. 4 hours ago, my daughter was taken, Jorge said without preamble. I need to know by who, where, and why. You have 90 minutes to bring me something useful. One of the men, older, gray-haired, stepped forward hesitantly. Jorge, we've heard rumors, but nothing solid yet. Then make them solid. Jorge's voice could have cut glass. Call every contact. Pull every favor. Tell them that the person who brings me real information will be rewarded beyond anything they've imagined. And tell them that anyone who knows something and stays silent will wish they'd never been born. The room went very still. This isn't a negotiation, Jorge continued quietly. This is the only warning you'll get. My daughter comes home. Everyone else is negotiable. The gray-haired man Petrov swallowed hard and nodded. We'll have something within the hour. Jorge didn't acknowledge the promise. He was already moving toward a back room, Rivera close behind. Torres stayed in the main room, his presence a silent reminder that Jorge's warning wasn't rhetorical. The back room was sparse. A table, 4 chairs, a single window with reinforced glass. Jorge stood at that window, looking out at the city that had been his kingdom for 2 decades. "You're thinking," Rivera said quietly. "I'm remembering." Jorge didn't turn around. "The men who took Emily. Watch the footage again." Rivera pulled out his phone, brought up the video Torres had shown them. The 2 figures emerging from the SUV, the practiced efficiency, the 30-second extraction. "What am I looking for?" Hesitation. Jorge finally turned. "The one on the left." When Emily pulls back, he glances toward the driver. Just for a second. He's checking for approval. Rivera rewound the footage, watched it again. Jorge was right. A fraction of a second, but there a momentary uncertainty. He wasn't confident, Jorge continued. Neither of them were. They moved professionally, but they were following instructions, not instinct. He crossed to the table, placing both palms flat on its surface. "They're hired, not decision-makers." "You're sure?" "I've been doing this long enough to know the difference between a man protecting his own interests and a man following orders." Jorge's eyes were distant, analytical. "Real operators don't hesitate, don't check in. They execute because the plan is theirs. These men, they were told exactly what to do, when to do it, and they followed the script." Rivera processed this. "If they're hired muscle, then they're disposable. Ramos or whoever orchestrated this wouldn't trust them with real information. They'd be given just enough detail to complete the job. Pick up the girl, deliver her to a location, collect payment. Which means torturing them for information would be pointless." Jorge straightened. "They don't know where Emily is now. They knew where to take her initially, but after that?" He shook his head. "They're insulated. That's how you run an operation like this. Compartmentalization. So they're a dead end." "No." Jorge's expression shifted, something calculating sliding behind his eyes. "They're a starting point. They may not know where Emily is, but they know who hired them. They know how contact was made, how payment was arranged. They know what they were told and, more importantly, what they weren't told." Rivera's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. "Torres says Petrov's people are picking up chatter. Nothing concrete yet, but the name Ramos keeps surfacing. Too easy." Jorge frowned. If Ramos is smart, and he is, he wouldn't let his name float around this quickly. This kind of exposure defeats the purpose of the pressure play. Unless he wants you to know. Why would he want that? Rivera thought for a moment. Ego? Sending a message that he's bold enough to challenge you directly? Maybe. But Jorge didn't sound convinced. Something wasn't sitting right. The pieces were there, but the pattern felt wrong. Or someone wants us looking at Ramos while they work from another angle entirely. The door opened. Torres stepped in, laptop under his arm. "Boss, we got something." One of Petrov's contacts saw the Escalade, 40 minutes ago, parked behind a warehouse in the industrial district. 2 men inside, waiting. Jorge's focus sharpened instantly. "Still there?" "As of 5 minutes ago, yes." "Then we move now." Jorge was already heading for the door. "Jorge," Rivera's voice stopped him. "If they're still waiting, it means they haven't been paid yet. Which means they're still useful to whoever hired them. Which means we don't have much time before they're disposed of." Jorge's jaw set. "Let's make sure we get to them first." The industrial district looked exactly as it sounded, functional, gray, built for commerce rather than aesthetics. Warehouses stretched in grid patterns, separated by wide streets designed for loading trucks. Rivera drove past the target location once, slow enough to confirm, fast enough not to draw attention. The black Escalade sat exactly where Torres's contact said it would be, tucked behind a warehouse that looked abandoned. 2 men inside, Rivera confirmed. Engines off. They're waiting for something. Or someone. Jorge studied the area. Limited sightlines. 1 main access road, but several alleys that could serve as escape routes. "Torres, position at the north exit. Anyone runs, you follow. Don't engage, just track." Torres nodded and slipped out 2 blocks away, disappearing into the maze of buildings. Rivera parked the sedan out of sight. "How do you want to play this?" Jorge considered. These men were hired hands, but they were also criminals who'd just kidnapped his daughter. Every instinct he had was screaming to handle this one way, fast, brutal, final. But that wouldn't bring Emily home. "We need them talking, not bleeding," Jorge said quietly. "Which means we don't lead with violence. We lead with fear. They already know who you are. Knowing and understanding are different things." Jorge checked his watch. 5:17 p.m. Right now, they think they're safe. They did their job, delivered the package, and now they're waiting for payment before they disappear. We're going to explain why that's not happening. They approached from opposite sides, Rivera from the east, Jorge from the west. Professional, unhurried, two men walking with purpose through an industrial area where purpose was normal. The men in the Escalade didn't notice until it was too late. Jorge appeared at the driver's side window. Rivera at the passenger side. Both doors opened simultaneously. Jorge didn't say anything at first. He simply looked at the driver, a man in his 30s, muscular, with the kind of casual arrogance that came from years of easy jobs and easy money. That arrogance died the moment the driver recognized Jorge's face. "Out," Jorge said quietly. The driver's hands went up instinctively. "Look, man, we were just—" "Out." Both men exited the vehicle. The passenger was younger, maybe mid-20s, and his fear was more obvious. His hands shook slightly as he raised them. "We don't want trouble," the driver said, trying to keep his voice steady. "We were paid for a job. That's all. We don't know anything." "You know enough." Jorge stepped closer. "You know you took Emily Morales. You know who her father is. And you know that standing here trying to convince me you're innocent is the stupidest thing you've done in a life full of stupid decisions." The younger man broke first. "It wasn't personal, man. We were just hired to kidnap my daughter." The silence that followed was absolute. "Here's what happens next," Jorge continued, his voice never rising above conversational level. "You tell me who hired you, how you were contacted, and where you took Emily. You answer every question I ask, completely and honestly. And then maybe you walk away from this." The driver's jaw tightened. "We don't know where she is now. We just did the pickup. I know, you're compartmentalized. You weren't trusted with the endgame, just the opening move." Jorge's expression didn't change. "But you know something. And that something is going to help me find my daughter. So talk." The driver's eyes darted between Jorge and Rivera, calculating odds that didn't exist. "We got contacted through an encrypted app," he finally said. 3 days ago. Simple job description: pick up a girl at a specific location and time, deliver her to an address, no questions. "What address?" "Apartment building, east side." We took her to the underground parking garage, handed her off to 2 other guys, collected half our payment, and left. "That's it. That's everything." Jorge's voice remained level. "The men you handed her to, describe them." The younger one spoke up, words tumbling out. One was older, maybe 50s, Eastern European accent. The other was local, I think, tattoos on his neck. They had a van waiting, black cargo van, no windows in the back. They put her inside and drove off. We never saw where they went. The building's address. The driver rattled off numbers and a street name. Rivera was already on his phone, pulling up the location. "Who was supposed to pay you the rest?" Jorge asked. "Same contact. We were told to wait here until we got confirmation. Then payment would be wired to an account." "Show me the app." The driver pulled out his phone with shaking hands, opened a messaging application Jorge didn't recognize. The conversation was sparse instructions, confirmation codes, nothing personal. The contact showed only as a string of numbers. Jorge memorized it in seconds. "When were you supposed to receive the rest of your payment?" "They said by 6 o'clock. Jorge checked his watch. 5:34 p.m. "You're not getting paid." The color drained from the driver's face. "What? You think whoever hired you is going to leave loose ends? You were supposed to disappear after this, one way or another." Jorge's expression was cold fact, not threat. "The only reason you're still breathing is because I got to you first." The younger man's voice cracked. "We didn't know it was your daughter, man. We didn't know." "You knew enough." Jorge cut him off. "You saw a young woman, you saw fear in her eyes, and you still put her in that vehicle. Don't ask me for sympathy because ignorance doesn't buy innocence." "What are you going to do with us?" the driver asked. Jorge considered them both. Every instinct, every rule he'd lived by for 20 years, said eliminate the threat. These men had touched Emily, had frightened her, had been the first link in a chain that led to wherever she was now. But killing them would take time he didn't have. And Emily needed him focused on finding her, not cleaning up bodies. Rivera stepped forward, cable ties already in hand. Within 30 seconds, both men were secured to the Escalade's door handles, unable to move but visible to anyone passing by. "Someone will find you eventually," Jorge said. "Maybe the police, maybe whoever hired you, coming to tie up loose ends. Either way, you're done in this city. If I ever see either of you again, ignorance won't save you." He turned and walked away, Rivera following. Behind them, the younger man started crying. They were 2 blocks away when Jorge's phone rang. Unknown number, different from the previous ones. He answered without speaking. A voice, digitally distorted, came through. "Mr. Morales, I trust you received our previous message." "I did." "Then you understand the situation. $2 million. Cash. Midnight. We'll send delivery instructions at 11 o'clock. No police, no tracking devices, no games. Or, Emily D's." Jorge's tone could have frozen water. "Let me speak to her." "That's not how this works." "Then we don't have a deal." A pause. Then, "You're not in a position to negotiate." "Neither are you." Jorge stopped walking, Rivera turning to watch him. "You took my daughter. You've made demands. But you haven't proven she's still alive. For all I know, this entire thing is a bluff." The photo was from 3 hours ago. A lot can happen in 3 hours. So here's my counteroffer. Let me speak to Emily. 5 seconds. That's all I need. Proof of life. Then we talk about money. Another pause, longer this time. Jorge could hear muffled sounds in the background voices. Maybe, or movement. "You have 1 minute to consider," Jorge added. "After that, I assume she's already dead, and this becomes a different conversation entirely. You're making a mistake." 50 seconds. The line went silent, but the call didn't disconnect. Jorge put it on speaker so Rivera could hear. Both men stood perfectly still, counting seconds. 30 seconds. 40. 50. Then a new sound. Breathing. Shaky, frightened, breathing. "Dad?" Emily's voice hit Jorge like a physical blow. She sounded terrified but alive. Alive. "Emily." He fought to keep his voice steady. "Are you hurt?" "I know I'm okay, I'm not hurt, but I don't know where." The phone was yanked away. The distorted voice returned, angry now. "There's your proof. Now you follow our instructions exactly, or..." Jorge ended the call. Rivera stared at him. "You hung up?" They wanted me panicked, desperate. Jorge's hands were steady, but his eyes burned with something fierce. They wanted me focused on that midnight deadline, scrambling to gather money while they stay 3 steps ahead. He started walking again, faster now, but I heard something more important than demands. "What?" Background noise. When Emily spoke, there was an echo. Not large, but distinct. Concrete walls, empty space, industrial, probably. Jorge's mind was racing, connecting pieces. And I heard something else. Faint, but there. A rhythmic sound. Mechanical, like a ventilation system or a generator. Rivera's expression shifted to understanding. "You narrowed the location. Warehouse district, probably abandoned. Somewhere with power but no foot traffic." Jorge pulled out his phone, pulling up a map. "And the apartment building where they first took her east side underground parking. That gives us a radius." His phone buzzed. A text message. Same number as the ransom call. "You shouldn't have done that. Emily's comfort is now negotiable. Midnight. 2 million. No more games." Jorge read it twice, then forwarded it to Rivera with instructions. "Trace it. I don't care if they're using encryption. Somebody knows how to break it." Another buzz, this time from Petrov's contact. "Confirmed. Ramos has been moving money. Large amounts. 3 days ago, same day as the initial contact with the hired men. Pattern matches laundering for a major operation." Jorge stopped at the sedan, leaning against it. Everything was connecting, but the picture wasn't complete yet. "The ransom is a distraction," he said quietly. "What?" "Think about it. 2 million in cash, by midnight. That's barely enough time to gather that much physical currency, even for me. Banks are closed. Private reserves take time to mobilize." Jorge's eyes narrowed. "They're not expecting me to pay. They're expecting me to scramble, to waste time trying to get money together while they execute their real plan. Which is leverage. They keep Emily just long enough to force me into a corner. Not about the money, about what they ask for next. Territory, roots, influence." Jorge's jaw set. "This is about making me weak, making me negotiable, proving to everyone watching that Jorge Morales can be controlled." Rivera absorbed this. "So we ignore the ransom?" "No. We prepare it. Let them think I'm playing their game." Jorge opened the car door. "But we don't wait for midnight. We find Emily first." The sedan moved through evening traffic with deliberate calm. But inside, Jorge's mind was operating at maximum velocity, connecting dots that others couldn't see. Rivera's phone rang. He answered on speaker. "Talk." Petrov's voice came through, tense with urgency. "We've got confirmation. Ramos has been consolidating support for weeks. 3 different crews have shifted loyalty in the last month alone. He's been promising expanded territory, better percentages, autonomy, everything people want to hear." "That's not news," Rivera said. "Ambitious lieutenants are always making promises. This is different." Petrov's tone dropped. "He's got backing. Real backing. Not just street-level promises. We're seeing money flow from outside the city. Eastern connections. The kind that don't get involved unless they expect significant returns." Jorge's expression remained neutral, but his fingers drummed once against his thigh, the only tell that his mind was racing. "What kind of returns?" "Your territory. Your supply lines. Your political connections. Ramos has been selling them the idea that you're vulnerable, that your refusal to expand, your careful approach, your—" Petrov paused delicately. "Your priorities have made you soft." "My daughter is my priority," Jorge said quietly. "And that makes me the opposite of soft. We know that. But Ramos has convinced his backers otherwise. He's framed your protection of Emily as a weakness, a pressure point, something that can be exploited." Rivera glanced at Jorge in the rearview mirror. "So this whole thing is about more than kidnapping." Jorge leaned back, the pieces falling into place with terrible clarity. "This is a coup. Take Emily. Force me into a position where I either pay an impossible ransom and look desperate, or I negotiate territory to get her back and look weak. Either way, I lose credibility. My allies start questioning whether I can protect them. My enemies smell blood, and Ramos steps in as the strong alternative. But if you get Emily back without giving up anything, then Ramos looks like a fool who picked a fight he couldn't finish." Jorge's eyes hardened. "Which is why they won't let me get her back. Not alive. Not whole. The moment I stop playing by their rules, Emily becomes expendable. They'll kill her just to prove they can. To prove that I couldn't protect the one thing I cared about most." The car filled with heavy silence. "So what do we do?" Rivera asked. Jorge was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the city he'd spent 2 decades mastering. Every block held memories, deals made, threats neutralized, power consolidated. He'd built his empire carefully, methodically, always thinking 3 moves ahead. But this wasn't chess. This was Emily. "We make them believe I'm playing their game," Jorge said finally. "I gather the ransom money. I act desperate. I let word spread that Jorge Morales is scrambling, vulnerable, exactly what Ramos has been saying." He turned to Rivera. "And while everyone's watching me panic, we hit them where they're not looking." "How?" "Ramos has been consolidating support. That means he's had meetings. Multiple meetings with multiple people over multiple weeks. He's been moving money, making promises, coordinating with outside backers. All of that leaves traces." Jorge pulled out his phone, already typing. "We find those traces. We figure out his infrastructure, not where Emily is, but who's helping Ramos run this operation. Who's providing safe houses, who's coordinating communications, who's managing the logistics." Rivera nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "You're not going after Emily directly." "I can't. Not yet. They're expecting that. They've probably moved her 3 times since the original handoff, precisely because they know I'll be hunting." Jorge's voice was cold calculation now. "But infrastructure is harder to move. Ramos has spent weeks building this network. He can't dismantle it in hours without losing control. So we don't chase Emily, we chase the network. We find the people making this possible, and we take them apart piece by piece until there's nowhere left for Ramos to hide her. That could take 6 hours, maybe less." Jorge checked his watch. 6:03 p.m. "We have until midnight. That gives us time to cut off Ramos's support, trace his communications, and narrow down where Emily actually is. By the time they expect me to show up with ransom money, I'll already have my daughter back." Rivera turned the car east, heading toward a location Jorge didn't need to specify. They both knew where they needed to be. "Petrov," Jorge said into the phone, "I need 3 things. First, a list of everyone who's shifted allegiance to Ramos in the last month. Second, locations of any property Ramos has acquired or rented in the last 6 weeks. Third, financial records. I want to know where his outside money is coming from and where it's going. That's going to take time. You have 90 minutes. "Jorge, that's not 90 minutes, Jorge repeated, his voice like iron. or I start assuming everyone who can't help me is actively working against me. Your choice. He ended the call. Rivera pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a building that didn't appear on any official registries. This was one of Jorge's quiet places, the kind of location that existed in the spaces between legal and illegal, visible and invisible. Inside, 4 people were already waiting. Jorge recognized them all. Information specialists, digital forensics experts, the people who could trace money and communications through layers of encryption and misdirection. 6 hours ago, my daughter was taken, Jorge said without preamble. The man behind it is named Ramos. He's been planning this for weeks, which means he's left digital footprints everywhere. Phone records, financial transfers, location data. I need all of it. Every piece of communication he's had with anyone connected to this operation. A woman in her 40s, eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses, spoke up. If he's smart, he's been using encrypted channels. He's smart enough to think he's covered his tracks. But nobody runs an operation this size without making mistakes. Find those mistakes. Jorge moved to a table covered with monitors and equipment. Start with the hired men who did the initial pickup. They were contacted 3 days ago through an encrypted app. Trace that communication back to its source. Then cross-reference with any unusual activity in the warehouse district power usage. Water. Any building that's suddenly active after being dormant. Another specialist, younger, already typing rapidly. We'll need access to utility databases, traffic cameras, cellular tower data. You have it. Jorge pulled out a phone different from his personal device and placed it on the table. This has clearance codes for systems you're not supposed to know exist. Use whatever you need. No restrictions. The team exchanged glances. They were professionals, used to working in gray areas, but what Jorge was offering was unprecedented access. If we use these codes, there will be traces, the woman warned. People will know someone was looking. Let them know. Jorge's expression was carved from stone. I want everyone in this city to understand that when you take something from Jorge Morales, there is nowhere deep enough to hide. No system secure enough to protect you. No distance far enough to save you. Rivera's phone buzzed. He read the message, then looked at Jorge. Torres has something. One of Ramos's crew was spotted at a restaurant in the financial district, having a late dinner, acting like nothing's happening. Name? Navarro, Ramos's second. If anyone knows operational details, it's him. Jorge considered this. Navarro was careful, experienced, not someone who would break easily under pressure. But careful men had patterns, and patterns could be exploited. Where exactly? Rivera rattled off the address. How long ago? 15 minutes. Torres says he's still there, alone. Jorge was already moving toward the door. Stay here, coordinate with the team. I want updates every 10 minutes on anything they find. Jorge. Rivera caught up with him. If you go after Navarro directly, it tips our hand. Ramos will know we're not playing by his rules. Good. Jorge's voice was quiet, but underneath it was something that made Rivera's instincts scream danger. I want him to know. I want him to understand that his careful plan is falling apart, that every person helping him is now a target. Fear makes people sloppy, Rivera. And when Ramos gets sloppy, he'll make the mistake that leads me to Emily. The restaurant was upscale, the kind of place where reservation lists stretched weeks ahead and the waitstaff remembered names and preferences. Jorge walked through the front entrance like he owned it, which, through a series of corporate shells and silent partnerships, he partially did. The maitre d' recognized him instantly, eyes widening with a mixture of respect and alarm. Jorge had never visited this establishment. His presence here meant something had gone very wrong for someone. Mr. Morales, we weren't expecting. Navarro, where? The maitre d' hesitated for only a second before gesturing toward the back. Private booth, corner. Jorge moved through the dining room with purpose. Conversations didn't stop. These patrons were too well trained in discretion, but awareness rippled through the space like a current. Navarro sat alone in a leather booth, finishing what looked like an expensive steak. He was in his early 40s, dressed in a tailored suit, the picture of a successful businessman enjoying a quiet evening. He looked up as Jorge approached, and the fork stopped halfway to his mouth. For 3 full seconds, neither man spoke. Then Navarro carefully set his fork down, dabbed his mouth with a napkin, and leaned back with a casualness that didn't reach his eyes. Jorge. Unexpected. Is it? Jorge slid into the booth across from him, uninvited. You're having dinner like this is a normal Tuesday while my daughter is missing. That seems deliberately provocative. I heard about Emily. Terrible thing. Navarro's voice carried just enough sympathy to be insulting. I hope she's found safely. You know where she is. I don't know what you're talking about. Jorge studied him. Navarro was good 20 years in this life, taught you how to control your reactions. But there were tells you couldn't hide. The slight tension in his shoulders, the way his right hand rested too casually near the edge of the table, close to where a weapon might be concealed. Ramos is making his move, Jorge said quietly. You're his second, which means you're part of the planning, part of the execution, which means you know exactly where Emily is. That's a serious accusation. It's a fact. Navarro's expression hardened slightly. Even if what you're suggesting were true, and I'm not saying it is, do you really think confronting me in a public restaurant is the smart play? You're outnumbered, Jorge. The city's changing. Your way of doing things, your careful control, your refusal to expand people, are tired of it. They want someone with vision, with ambition. They want someone who promises them things he can't deliver. Jorge leaned forward, voice dropping to just above a whisper. Ramos has sold you all a story. That I'm weak. That my care for my daughter makes me vulnerable. That you can take what's mine because I won't fight back hard enough. He paused. Would you like to know what's actually happening right now? Navarro said nothing, but Jorge saw the calculation in his eyes. Right now, I have a team tracing every communication Ramos has made in the last month. Every financial transaction, every meeting, every promise. Jorge's tone never rose, but the temperature in the booth seemed to drop. In 3 hours, I will know the location of every safe house, every supporter, every piece of infrastructure Ramos needs to run his operation. And then I'm going to dismantle all of it. You don't have 3 hours. The ransom is a distraction. We both know Emily won't survive midnight whether I pay or not. This was never about money. Jorge's eyes were cold fact. But here's what Ramos didn't account for. I don't need to negotiate. I don't need to wait. I just need to apply enough pressure in the right places until his entire network collapses. And someone, maybe you, maybe someone else, decides that protecting Ramos isn't worth dying for. Navarro's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Am I? Jorge pulled out his phone, brought up a photo, and turned it toward Navarro. These are the 2 men who picked up Emily. I found them 40 minutes ago. They told me about the handoff, the apartment building, the men with the van, the payment structure. He swiped to another image. This is the financial transaction from 3 days ago. Ramos's money, moving through an account registered to a shell company that I now control. The color drained from Navarro's face. I know about the Eastern backing, Jorge continued. I know about the territory promises. I know about the meetings in the warehouse district, the power plays, the consolidation of support. I know all of it, Navarro. The only thing I don't know yet is where Emily is right now. And you're going to tell me. I can't. Navarro's composure cracked. If I talk, Ramos will. Ramos will what? Kill you? Jorge's voice was ice. Look at me, Navarro. Really look. Do you think Ramos is more dangerous to you right now than I am? The silence stretched between them. Here's your choice, Jorge said. You tell me where Emily is, and you walk out of this restaurant alive. You disappear from the city, and I never think about you again. Or, he leaned closer, you stay loyal to Ramos. And when I find Emily, and I will find her, I'm going to remember everyone who had a chance to help and chose not to. And I'm going to make sure they regret that choice for whatever time they have left. Navarro's hand trembled slightly against the table. You're asking me to betray. I'm offering you a chance to survive what's coming. Take it or don't. But choose now. For a long moment, Navarro just stared at him. Jorge could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, weighing loyalties, assessing risks, trying to determine which path led to death and which to survival. Then Navarro's shoulders sagged, just slightly. I don't know exactly where she is. That's the truth. Ramos kept locations compartmentalized. But I know the general area. Industrial District, South Side. There's a cluster of warehouses that Ramos acquired through a proxy 6 weeks ago. He's been using them for storage, but 3 days ago he cleared out one of the buildings completely, brought in a generator, supplies, hired private security. Which building? I don't have an address, just coordinates. Navarro pulled out his phone with shaking hands, brought up a map, and showed Jorge a marked location. Here. But Jorge, it's not just Emily there. Ramos has... A phone rang. Not Jorge's, not Navarro's. A third phone, sitting on the table between them. Neither man had placed it there. Both men looked at it. Jorge recognized what it was instantly, a burner, pre-programmed to call at a specific time or under specific conditions, a dead man's switch, or a warning system. He picked it up, answered, said nothing. The digitally distorted voice came through, the same one from the ransom call. But the tone was different now. Not confident. Angry. "Mr. Morales, I see you're having dinner with Navarro. How interesting." A pause. "Did you really think we wouldn't be watching? Did you think you could investigate, threaten, pressure your way to Emily without consequences?" Jorge's expression didn't change, but his grip on the phone tightened. "You have a choice to make," the voice continued. "You can keep playing detective, keep hunting down my associates, keep trying to be clever. Or you can save your daughter. But you can't do both. Every person you threaten, every source you trace, every minute you spend not following my instructions is a minute Emily spends paying for your pride. Let me speak to her. You had your proof of life. Now you follow the rules. $2 million. Midnight. The location will be sent to you at 11. Come alone. No tracking, no backup, no games. Or Emily dies knowing her father chose revenge over her life." The line went dead. Jorge set the phone down slowly. Across from him, Navarro had gone pale. "They were listening," Navarro whispered. "They heard everything I just told you." "I know. Then Navarro started to stand, panic taking over. "I'm dead. Ramos will know I talked and—" Jorge's hand shot across the table, gripping Navarro's wrist with surprising strength. "Sit down." Navarro froze. "You think running will save you?" Jorge's voice was quiet, controlled, but underneath it was steel. "You think Ramos won't find you before I do? You made your choice the moment you opened your mouth. Now you're going to finish it. What do you want from me?" "Everything. Every location Ramos uses. Every person he trusts. Every contingency plan he has. You're going to tell me everything, and then you're going to help me get Emily back." "I can't." "You don't have a choice anymore." Jorge released his wrist. "Neither of us do." Jorge's phone buzzed before Navarro could respond. "Rivera." He answered immediately. "The team found something." Rivera's voice was tight with urgency. "Communications intercept from 40 minutes ago. Ramos ordered a vehicle movement from the South Industrial Zone. They're relocating Emily." Jorge's jaw clenched. "When?" "The call went out at 5:47. If they're moving her, they're already in transit." Across the table, Navarro's face went even paler. "They're moving her because of me. Because I—" "No." Jorge cut him off, mind racing. "They planned this. The call I just received, the surveillance, the phone on the table, all of it was designed to make me think I'm forcing their hand. But they were always going to move her." He stood abruptly. "They want me scattered, chasing shadows. Too many locations, too many possibilities, not enough time. So what do we do?" Navarro's voice cracked. Jorge looked at him with cold assessment. "You said Ramos acquired multiple warehouses. How many?" 5, maybe 6. All within a 2-mile radius. That's too many to search before midnight." Jorge pulled out his phone, texting Rivera the coordinates Navarro had shown him. "But they can't move Emily to just anywhere. It has to be secure, isolated, somewhere Ramos controls completely." Navarro swallowed hard. "There's one building that's different from the others. Ramos brought in renovations 3 weeks ago. Reinforced doors, security systems, soundproofing. He said it was for high-value storage, but it's a holding facility." Jorge's eyes narrowed. "Where?" Navarro pulled up the map again, zooming in. "Here. It's the largest building in the cluster. Used to be a distribution center before it went bankrupt. 3 floors, underground access, only 2 entrances both monitored." Jorge studied the location, the surrounding streets, the sight lines, classic defensive positioning. Ramos had prepared this carefully. "How many men?" "I don't know exactly. But Ramos hired outside security. Professionals, not street level. 8, maybe 10. Armed? Definitely." Jorge's phone buzzed again. This time it was Petrov. "Jorge, we traced the financial backing. The Eastern connections run deeper than we thought. This isn't just Ramos making a play, he's got a syndicate behind him. Ukrainian network, serious players. They've invested heavily in this operation." "How heavily?" 7 figures, maybe more. They're not just backing Ramos, they're expecting a return. Your territory, your infrastructure, your connections. This is a hostile takeover, Jorge, and they've been planning it for months. Jorge absorbed this, the full scope of what he was facing, becoming clear. This wasn't a simple kidnapping. This was war, disguised as a ransom. Petrov, I need everything you have on the Ukrainian network. Leadership, local operators, anyone connected to this. Jorge's voice was command now, not request. And I need it in 30 minutes. That's not enough time. Then work faster. He ended the call and turned back to Navarro, the security team at the warehouse. Who hired them? Ramos used a third-party contractor. Private military types, former soldiers. They're loyal to whoever pays them, not to him personally. Good. Jorge started walking toward the exit, Navarro scrambling to follow. That means they're professional, which means they can be reasoned with. Reasoned with? Jorge, they're guarding your daughter. They're not just going to... Jorge stopped so abruptly that Navarro nearly collided with him. They're guarding a kidnap victim in a criminal operation that's about to collapse. When I show up with proof that their employer is about to be destroyed, that law enforcement is minutes behind me, and that their only path to survival is walking away, they'll take it. Professionals don't die for lost causes. You're going to bluff them? I'm going to tell them the truth. Jorge pushed through the restaurant doors into the evening air. In 3 hours, Ramos won't have an organization left. Everyone supporting him will be either arrested, dead, or running. The smart ones will recognize that before it happens. A sedan pulled up Rivera behind the wheel. Jorge climbed in, gesturing for Navarro to follow. Tell me you have good news, Jorge said as the car accelerated into traffic. Mixed news. The team traced the encrypted communications. Ramos has been coordinating through a secure network, but they left metadata traces. We've identified 17 different individuals in direct contact with him over the last 72 hours. Rivera handed back a tablet showing faces and names. These are his core supporters, the ones actually executing this operation. Jorge scanned the list. Some names he recognized, mid-level operators looking to rise. Others were unfamiliar, likely the outside contractors and Ukrainian connections. Where are they now? That's the good part. 3 of them are in custody. We had mutual contacts reach out to federal agents we work with. They're being picked up on unrelated warrants as we speak. Rivera turned a corner sharply. 4 more have gone to ground, but we know their locations. And 2, he paused. 2 were found dead, 30 minutes ago. Jorge's head snapped up. What? Shot, execution style, in a car near the waterfront. Ramos is cleaning house. The realization settled over Jorge like ice water. He's eliminating anyone who might talk, anyone who knows too much. Navarro's breathing became rapid in the back seat. That means you're very lucky you're with me right now, Jorge said without looking at him. Because if you'd stayed loyal, you'd be dead by morning. Rivera's phone rang. He answered on speaker. Torres's voice came through, tight with stress. Boss, we have a problem. The warehouse Navarro told you about? We sent a surveillance drone. There's activity, but it's wrong. Wrong how? There are vehicles, there are guards, but it's too quiet, too staged. Like they're expecting us. Torres paused. I think it's a trap. Jorge processed this instantly. They know we're coming. They've known since the restaurant. He turned to Navarro. What else? What haven't you told me? Nothing. I swear that's the only location. Think, Navarro. Jorge's voice sharpened. Ramos is smart. Compartmentalized. You said it yourself. What if the warehouse isn't where Emily is? What if it's just where you think she is? Navarro's face went slack with realization. Oh God. What? The renovations. I assumed they were for Emily, but... Navarro pulled out his phone frantically, scrolling through messages. There's another property, not in the industrial zone. I saw invoices a month ago. Didn't think anything of it because Ramos said it was personal. A storage facility. Climate-controlled. Where? Navarro showed him the address. It was 15 miles in the opposite direction from the warehouse. Jorge's mind split the problem into immediate pieces. 2 locations, limited time, a trap at one, and possibly Emily at the other. Every instinct told him to split resources, cover both angles. But instinct could be manipulated. Rivera, call Torres. I want eyes on both locations. Thermal imaging if possible. I need to know which building is occupied and which is theater. That'll take time. We don't have time. Jorge checked his watch. 7:33 p.m. But we have something better. We have Navarro. Navarro looked terrified. What are you? You're going to call Ramos, Jorge said calmly. You're going to tell him I interrogated you, that you gave up the warehouse location, and that I'm mobilizing to hit it within the hour. You're going to sell it completely. He'll kill me, He's going to kill you anyway. But if you do this, if you help me get Emily back, I'll make sure you survive long enough to disappear." Jorge's expression was stone. "And if you refuse, I'll hand you back to Ramos myself." Navarro's hands shook as he pulled out his phone. "Put it on speaker," Jorge instructed. "And Navarro, be convincing." The call connected after 3 rings. Ramos's voice came through smooth, confident. Exactly what Jorge expected from a man who thought he was winning. "Navarro, where are you?" "He found me." Navarro's voice cracked perfectly, genuine terror bleeding through. "Jorge, he knew about the warehouses, about the Ukrainian backing, everything. I couldn't." "What did you tell him?" "The industrial facility, the renovated building. He's coming for it, Ramos. He's gathering people right now. He's going to hit the location hard within the hour." "Calm down." Ramos's voice stayed level, but Jorge heard something underneath it. Satisfaction. "Did he ask about anything else? Any other locations?" "No, just that one. He thinks Emily's there." I tried not to say anything, but he... "It's fine, Navarro. You did well. Come in from the cold. Meet me at the usual place and we'll sort this out." The call ended. Silence filled the car. "He bought it," Rivera said quietly. "He bought what he wanted to believe," Jorge corrected. "That I'm predictable. That I'm going to charge into his trap while he secures Emily at the real location. So we go to the storage facility?" Jorge stared out the window, watching the city slide past. Everything in him wanted to move now, immediately, to crash through whatever barriers stood between him and his daughter. But Emily didn't need his rage. She needed his precision. "No," Jorge said finally. "We go to both." Jorge made 3 calls in rapid succession. The first was to his most trusted team, 6 men who'd been with him for over a decade. The industrial warehouse. Full approach in 40 minutes. Make it loud. Make it visible. I want Ramos thinking that's where all my attention is. The second was to Rivera's younger brother, Miguel, who ran a small but efficient crew. The storage facility on 9th. Quiet approach. No lights, no sirens, nothing that announces we're coming. Be in position in 30 minutes, but don't move until I give the word. The third was to someone Jorge hadn't spoken to in 5 years. Federal agent Catherine Walsh, who owed him a debt she'd never been able to repay. "Kate, I need a favor." Her voice was cautious. "Jorge, it's been a while. My daughter was kidnapped. The people holding her have Ukrainian syndicate backing. I'm about to do something that will either end this cleanly or turn into a bloodbath. I need you ready to clean up the aftermath." A pause. "What are you asking?" "I'm asking you to be in position to arrest everyone involved the moment Emily is safe. I'm handing you a Ukrainian organized crime network, a local trafficking operation, and enough evidence to make your career. All I need is 30 minutes before you move. Jorge, if you're planning..." "I'm planning to get my daughter back. Everything else is secondary. Are you in or not?" Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Send me the locations. I'll have teams ready. But Jorge, if this goes wrong, I can't protect you." "I'm not asking you to." He ended the call and looked at Rivera. "Take us to the storage facility. The long route. I want to give the warehouse team time to get into position first." Navarro was shaking in the back seat. "What happens to me?" Jorge turned to look at him. "You stay with Rivera. When this is over, you disappear. New city, new name, new life. But if I find out you've contacted Ramos, if I find out you've warned anyone, there won't be anywhere far enough to run." "I won't, I swear." "You'd better hope that's true." The car moved through the city as evening deepened into night. Jorge's phone buzzed constantly, updates from his team at the warehouse, confirmation from Miguel that they were in position at the storage facility, a terse message from Agent Walsh that federal units were mobilizing. Everything was converging. Jorge allowed himself one moment, just one, to think about Emily. Not the fear she must be feeling, not the danger she was in, but who she was. The little girl who used to fall asleep on his shoulder. The teenager who argued with him about curfews. The young woman who'd looked at him at her graduation and said, "I know you're not perfect, Dad, but you're perfect for me." He'd spent her entire life trying to keep her separate from his world, and his world had taken her anyway. But it wouldn't keep her. "We're 10 minutes out," Rivera said quietly. Jorge nodded. "Tell Miguel to move into final position. Visual confirmation only. No engagement until I'm on site." His phone buzzed. "Miguel. Boss, we have visual. 3 vehicles outside the facility, guards at both entrances. Thermal shows multiple heat signatures inside at least 6 people, maybe more." One signature is isolated on the second floor. Smaller. Could be her. Jorge's chest tightened. Position? Northeast corner. Single room. One guard outside the door. Any movement? Negative. Whoever's in that room hasn't moved in the last 10 minutes. Either Emily was restrained, or she was hurt, or she was. Jorge forced the thought away. Hold position. We're 5 minutes out. The storage facility came into view, a 3-story concrete building that had seen better decades. Minimal lighting. Chain link fence. Exactly the kind of place that operated in the gaps between legal and illegal. Rivera parked 2 blocks away. Jorge stepped out, checking the weapon concealed at his back insurance he hoped he wouldn't need. The plan? Rivera asked. I walk in the front. I tell them who I am and what I want. I give them one chance to walk away. Jorge's voice was calm, but his eyes were cold. If they take it, Emily comes home and they disappear. If they don't, he glanced at Rivera. That's what Miguel's team is for. That's a lot of faith and professional courtesy. It's not faith. It's math. They're being paid to guard a building. I'm offering them their lives. Most people can calculate which is worth more. Jorge started walking. Rivera fell in beside him, hand near his own weapon. The front guard saw them coming from 50 yards away. He straightened, hand moving to his radio. Jorge raised both hands, showing he was unarmed, technically true since his weapon was concealed. I need to speak to whoever's in charge. Tell them Jorge Morales is here to negotiate. The guard spoke into his radio, listened to a response Jorge couldn't hear, then nodded. Mr. Morales, we've been expecting you. But you're early. The arrangement was midnight. Arrangements change. Where's my daughter? That's not my concern. My concern is that you're not supposed to be here yet, and you're not alone. The guard's eyes flicked to Rivera. My associate stays with me. Non-negotiable. The guard spoke into his radio again. A longer conversation this time. Then he stepped aside. Second floor. Northeast corner. But Mr. Morales, you should know that the moment you walk through that door, our employer will be notified. And if he decides your early arrival violates the agreement, then he violates it. Jorge moved past him. But I'm going to see my daughter. Now. The interior of the facility was exactly what Jorge expected. Converted warehouse space, concrete floors, metal stairs leading up. 2 more guards inside, both armed, both watching him with the careful assessment of professionals. Second floor, one of them said. Straight back, but slowly. And your associate stays here. Jorge looked at Rivera, who nodded slightly. Then he started climbing the stairs alone. Each step felt both too fast and too slow. Emily was close now. So close he could feel it, that pull parents have, that instinct that says your child is near. At the top of the stairs, another guard stood outside a single door. Younger than the others, but his stance was professional, weapon visible but not drawn. Mr. Morales, open the door. I can't do that. Not yet. Orders are... I don't care about your orders. Jorge's voice dropped to something dangerous. My daughter is behind that door. You can open it, or I can go through you to open it. Choose. The guard's hand moved toward his weapon, not drawing, just preparing. Then a voice came from behind the door, muffled, frightened, but unmistakable. Dad? Every muscle in Jorge's body went rigid. Emily. Dad, I'm here, The guard's radio crackled, a voice Jorge didn't recognize. Let him in. Mr. Ramos wants to talk. The guard hesitated, then unlocked the door. Jorge pushed it open. The room was small, sparsely furnished, a chair, a cot, a single window with bars. And sitting on the cot, hands bound but otherwise unharmed, was Emily. Their eyes met. For one perfect second, nothing else existed. Not the guards, not the danger, not the war happening outside these walls. Just a father and his daughter, separated by 10 feet and a lifetime of fear. Then Emily started crying. Dad, I was so scared. Jorge crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling beside her, checking her for injuries with hands that trembled despite his control. Are you hurt? Did they? I'm okay. I'm not hurt. They kept moving me and I didn't know if... Shh. You're safe now. I've got you. Jorge pulled out a knife, cut through her restraints. Emily threw her arms around him, sobbing into his shoulder, and for just a moment, Jorge Morales, who'd built an empire on control and calculation, held his daughter and let himself feel the terror he'd been suppressing for 7 hours. I've got you, he whispered. You're safe. I promise. The moment didn't last. Jorge heard footsteps on the stairs, multiple sets, ascending with purpose. He stood, positioning himself between Emily and the door, helping her to her feet. "Stay behind me," he said quietly. 3 men entered the room. The first was the guard from outside. The second was another professional Jorge didn't recognize. The third was Ramos. Ramos was younger than Jorge, early 30s, dressed like a businessman who'd decided to play crime lord. Expensive suit, perfect hair, the kind of surface polish that hid inexperience. "Mr. Morales." Ramos smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're persistent. I admire that. Let my daughter leave. Whatever happens next is between you and me." "That's not how this works." Ramos gestured casually to the guards. "You see, you were supposed to arrive at midnight, alone, with $2 million in cash. Instead, you're here early. You've clearly coordinated with outside parties. And," he checked his phone, "you have federal agents mobilizing toward my warehouse location. So the arrangement has changed." Jorge's expression remained neutral. "What do you want?" "What I've always wanted. Territory, your distribution routes, your political connections, your complete withdrawal from operations in this city." Ramos stepped closer. "You're going to sign documents transferring control to me. You're going to walk away. And Emily goes free. And if I refuse?" Ramos's smile widened. "Then Emily doesn't leave this building, and neither do you. The Ukrainians have invested too much in this operation to walk away empty-handed. One way or another, Jorge Morales stops being a problem tonight." Emily's hand gripped Jorge's arm. He could feel her trembling. "You made a mistake," Jorge said quietly. "Did I? You assumed I built what I have through fear, through violence, through the kind of thinking you're using right now." Jorge's voice was steady, each word deliberate. "But I built it through patience, through understanding leverage, through knowing when to fight and when to let others destroy themselves." Ramos frowned. "What are you talking about?" "Right now, federal agents are moving on your warehouse. They'll find enough evidence to dismantle your entire operation, weapons, communications equipment, financial records you were stupid enough to keep on site." Jorge's eyes never left Ramos's face. "Your Ukrainian backers? They're about to lose their investment. And when that happens, they won't blame me, they'll blame you. You're bluffing." "Am I? Check your phone. See if anyone at the warehouse is still answering." Ramos pulled out his phone, dialed. His expression changed as the call went straight to voicemail. He tried another number. Same result. They could be arrested or running. Either way, your support structure just collapsed. Jorge took a small step forward. "And these professional contractors you hired? They're smart enough to know when they're on a sinking ship, aren't you?" He directed the last question to the guards. Both men exchanged glances, uncertainty creeping into their stances. "You don't know what you're talking about," Ramos said, but his voice had lost its confidence. "I know exactly what I'm talking about. You made a play for power without understanding the full cost. You took my daughter thinking it would make me weak. Instead, it made me focused, singular, unstoppable." Jorge's voice dropped. "I've spent the last 7 hours destroying everything you built. Every ally you had is gone. Every safe place is compromised. Every promise you made is worthless. And when the Ukrainians realize their money is gone and their operation is burned, they're going to come looking for explanations." Ramos's jaw clenched. "You think you've won? You think just because—" "I think you're standing in a building surrounded by federal agents, holding a kidnap victim, while your entire organization collapses around you. I think your window for negotiation just closed." Jorge's expression hardened. "So here's what's going to happen. Emily walks out of this building with me. You surrender to the federal authorities outside, and maybe you live long enough to see trial." "I'm not surrendering." "Then you're dying here." Jorge's voice was absolute. "Because I'm not leaving without my daughter. And if that means this ends with bodies, then that's how it ends. Your choice." The room went silent. One of the guards cleared his throat. "Mr. Ramos, if federal agents are outside—" "Shut up!" Ramos's hand moved toward his waistband, where Jorge could now see the outline of a weapon. Everything slowed down. Jorge saw the movement, calculated distances, assessed angles. Emily was behind him, protected but trapped. Rivera was 2 floors below. Miguel's team was outside but couldn't move without risking Emily in crossfire. He was on his own. "Don't," Jorge said quietly. Ramos's hand closed around the weapon. Jorge moved. 20 years of experience compressed into 3 seconds. He closed the distance before Ramos could draw, his hand clamping around the other man's wrist with iron grip. The weapon clattered to the floor. One of the guards started forward. Jorge's foot caught him in the knee, not enough to permanently damage, just enough to drop him. The second guard raised his weapon. "Don't move. Lower it." Rivera's voice came from the doorway, his own weapon trained on the guard. Miguel appeared behind him, flanked by two more of Jorge's men. The guard hesitated, then slowly lowered his weapon. Jorge released Ramos, who stumbled backward, breathing hard. "It's over," Jorge said. "The building is surrounded. Your operation is finished. You can surrender, or you can make this harder than it needs to be. But either way, Emily walks out." Ramos looked around at his guards with weapons lowered, at Rivera and Miguel blocking the exit, at the empire he'd tried to build crumbling in real time. "You haven't won," he said quietly. "Even if I go down, someone else will take your territory. Someone else will. Maybe." Jorge moved to Emily, placing himself between her and every potential threat in the room. "But it won't be you. And whoever comes next will remember what happened to the man who touched my daughter." Footsteps thundered up the stairs. Agent Walsh appeared, federal agents behind her, weapons drawn. "Jorge Morales, step away from..." She stopped, taking in the scene. "What happened here? A kidnapping victim is safe. The perpetrators are surrendering. Everything else is paperwork." Jorge guided Emily toward the door. "Unless you want to complicate things?" Walsh looked at Ramos, at the guards, at the evidence of a crime that would keep her busy for months. "We'll need statements. From both of you. Later," Jorge said. "Jorge." "Later." He walked Emily past the federal agents, past his own men, down the stairs and out into the night air. Emily was shaking, adrenaline and shock finally catching up with her. Jorge held her steady, one arm around her shoulders, guiding her toward Rivera's sedan. "Dad," she whispered. "What did you do?" "What I had to. Nothing more." "The man, Ramos," he said. "It doesn't matter what he said. You're safe. That's all that matters." They reached the car. Rivera already had the engine running. Jorge helped Emily into the back seat, climbed in beside her. "Home?" Rivera asked. Jorge looked at his daughter, exhausted, traumatized, but alive, whole, safe. "Home," he confirmed. As the car pulled away, Emily leaned against him. "I knew you'd come. I was scared, but I knew." Jorge wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "Always, no matter what." Behind them, federal agents swarmed the building. Ramos and his men were being taken into custody. The Ukrainian network was being rolled up. An entire operation, dismantled in hours. But Jorge wasn't thinking about any of that. He was thinking about the little girl who used to fall asleep on his shoulder, the teenager who challenged him, the young woman who just survived something no one should have to survive. His daughter, the one person who made everything else, power, territory, empire, seem utterly insignificant. "I love you," Emily whispered. "I love you too," Jorge said. "More than you'll ever know." The apartment was exactly as Jorge had left it 8 hours earlier. Emily's phone still on the counter, her backpack still missing from the hallway. The quiet that had signaled something was wrong now felt like peace. Emily walked through the space slowly, touching familiar objects, the kitchen table, the couch, the photo on the wall, reconnecting with normalcy after hours of fear. Jorge watched her, saw the tremor in her hands, the way she kept looking over her shoulder. Trauma didn't disappear just because the danger ended. "I should shower," Emily said quietly. I need to feel clean." "Take your time. I'll be here." She disappeared into the bathroom. Jorge heard the water start, heard her crying through the door, the kind of crying that came when safety finally allowed emotions to surface. He wanted to go to her, comfort her. But some things a person needed to process alone. His phone buzzed. "Rivera. Everything's secure. Federal agents have Ramos and 4 associates in custody. They found records at the warehouse, financial transactions, communications logs, enough to trace the Ukrainian network. Agent Walsh says it's the biggest organized crime bust this city's seen in a decade." "Good. There's more." Navarro disappeared. Miguel's team lost track of him near the waterfront. Could be running. Could be, let him go. He helped when it mattered. That buys him a head start. A pause. "You've gone soft. I've gotten my daughter back. Everything else can wait." Jorge moved to the window, looking out at the city. "What about the others? The people who supported Ramos? Most are cooperating with federal authorities. The ones who aren't have gone underground. Either way, Ramos's operation is finished. No one's going to try rebuilding it. They'll try something else. Different name, different approach. Maybe, but they'll remember tonight. They'll remember what happens when someone crosses certain lines. Jorge thought about that. For 20 years, he'd maintained power through calculated restraint, through being respected more than feared, through building systems that didn't rely on brutality. Tonight had been different. Tonight he'd shown the city something it hadn't seen in years: what happened when calculation gave way to absolute will, when every rule and restraint vanished in pursuit of a single goal. It had worked. Emily was safe, but Jorge knew the cost. The facade of the careful, controlled strategist had cracked. People had seen what lay underneath, and that changed things in ways he couldn't fully predict yet. "Rivera, I need you to handle something. Name it. I want a foundation established, dedicated to helping families caught in criminal crossfire, education assistance, relocation support, protection services, everything people need to escape situations they didn't choose." Silence on the line. Then, "That's going to draw attention. Questions about where the money comes from, what your motives are. I don't care. Use legitimate channels, set it up properly, and put Emily's name on it. Jorge, she survived something tonight that will stay with her forever. I can't undo that, but I can make sure other families don't have to survive the same thing." Jorge's voice was quiet but firm. "This is happening, Rivera. Just make it happen right." "Understood. I'll start in the morning." The water shut off. Jorge heard Emily moving in the bathroom, heard the sound of her breathing, still shaky but steadier than before. When she emerged, wearing clean clothes, hair damp, she looked more like herself. Still shaken, still processing, but present. "Dad," she said quietly. "What you did tonight, She struggled for words. "I don't know everything about your life, about what you do. But I know it's complicated. I know it's not simple or legal or easy, and I know you've tried to keep me separate from it." Jorge waited, not sure where this was going. "But tonight, I saw something," Emily continued. "I saw how many people jumped when you called, how much influence you have, how scared Ramos was when he realized you were actually coming for me." She met his eyes. "You saved me, Dad. You mobilized an entire city to save me, and I'm grateful. I'm so grateful I can't even find words for it. But I also saw the cost. I saw what you had to become, what you had to do." Her voice cracked slightly. "And I don't want you to have to be that person. Not because of me. Not ever." Jorge crossed the room, sat beside her on the couch. "Emily, everything I've done, everything I've built has been to protect you, to give you options I never had, to keep you safe from exactly what happened tonight. I know. But Dad," Emily took his hand, "I'm 22 years old. I'm not a child anymore. You can't protect me from everything, and I don't want you sacrificing who you are or what you believe in just because you're worried about me. That's not how this works. You're my daughter. Protecting you isn't a sacrifice, it's the point of everything else. Then let me protect you too." Emily squeezed his hand. "Whatever changes need to happen because of tonight, whatever decisions you need to make, let me be part of that conversation. Don't carry it all alone." Jorge looked at his daughter, this young woman who'd survived a kidnapping, and was somehow comforting him, and felt something shift in his chest. For 20 years, he'd kept her separate, protected her innocence, built walls between her world and his. But tonight those walls had shattered. Emily had seen his world directly, had survived it, and was somehow still here asking to understand more rather than less. "Okay," Jorge said quietly. "Okay. We'll figure out what comes next together." They sat in silence for a moment, father and daughter, both processing a night that had changed everything. "Dad," Emily said finally, "the man tonight, Ramos. He said things about territory and power and operations. He made it sound like you control half the city." Jorge considered how to answer. The truth was complicated, yes and no, legal and illegal, morally gray in ways Emily was only beginning to understand. "I have influence," he said carefully. "I've built relationships and systems that help me navigate spaces most people can't access. Some of it's legitimate business, some of it's more complicated, but you're not going to stop." It wasn't a question. "I don't know," Jorge admitted. "A week ago I would have said this life is all I know, all I'm good at. But tonight," he looked at her, "tonight I was reminded what actually matters, and I'm not sure the rest is worth the cost anymore." Emily leaned her head on his shoulder, exactly like she used to when she was little. "Whatever you decide, I'm here. We'll figure it out together. Jorge wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. Outside, the city continued its endless motion. Traffic, lights, lives intersecting and diverging in patterns too complex to fully understand. Somewhere in that city, people were talking about what happened tonight. About Jorge Morales and how quickly he'd dismantled an entire operation. About the message he'd sent. But Jorge wasn't thinking about messages or reputation or power. He was thinking about the little girl on his shoulder, the teenager who challenged him, the young woman who'd just offered to help him navigate an impossible future, his daughter, the one line he would never allow anyone to cross. And the reason everything else, empire, influence, control, suddenly seemed very small indeed. I love you, kiddo, Jorge whispered. I love you too, Dad. They sat together in the quiet apartment, two people who'd survived something that should have destroyed them, and somehow found themselves stronger for it, not because of violence or power or fear, but because of something simpler and infinitely more powerful, a father's love for his daughter, and a daughter's faith in her father, the line no one should ever cross, the line that, when crossed, changes everything, the line that made Jorge Morales legendary not for what he destroyed but for what he refused to lose. Thanks for staying with this story right till the final moment. You're the reason these stories come alive. If you're ready for another powerful journey, just tap the next video on your screen. And before you go, leave a quick comment and rate this story from 1 to 10. I'm excited to see your thoughts and connect with you down there.